Hi, my name's Tom Keating and I'm an analyst of terrorist finance. The question we're going to look at today is the role played by counter-terror finance in international security. Terrorists have always needed finance to maintain their mission and conduct operations, but following 9/11, targeting the financing of terrorists grew to become a key plank of CT operations around the world. It's a field that deserves greater scrutiny as the implications of the global financial war on terror reach into many fields, with consequences both intended and unintended for not just terrorists, but also NGOs, remittance companies, and individuals. It's often overlooked that the first shot fired by George W. Bush in the war on terror following 9/11 was to sign Executive Order 13224, launching what he called a strike on the financial foundation of the global terror network, aiming to starve terrorists of funding. The US and its partners set about freezing the assets and bank accounts of individuals or groups believed to be providing material support to designated terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda. This effort was supported by guidelines set out by the global body charged with combating illicit finance, the Financial Action Task Force, as well as by UN resolutions 1267 and 1373. So why is CTF such an important part of the global CT strategy? On the face of it, terrorist attacks are cheap to conduct. The London transport bombings are estimated to have cost only £8,000, the Madrid train bombings $10,000, and even 9/11 itself is estimated to have cost only $400,000 to $500,000. But these direct costs are only a small part of the financing terrorists need. The indirect costs of maintaining the enabling environment necessary to sustain terrorist activities can be considerable. For example, the CIA estimated that Al-Qaeda's annual financing requirement prior to 9/11 was $30 million, spent mainly on training, education and indoctrination of its members, contribution to host regimes such as the Taliban, and the expense of maintaining its military infrastructure of camps, safe houses, and equipment. Of course, the shape of terrorist organizations has changed in the years since 9/11, but money is still important, whether it is for Al-Shabaab to provide payments to fighters and welfare to inhabitants in south-central Somalia, for jihadi groups to attract fighters and buy support in rebel-held areas in Syria, or simply to source weapons and ammunition in jihadi theatres. And of course, there is the fundraising undertaken by aspirant foreign fighters, who are often expected to pay their own travel expenses, and sometimes, as revealed by the 2009 interrogation of a French jihadi, also expected to pay for their weapon, ammunition, and training. Just as the need for funds has changed since 9/11, so has the sources of funds, driven by geopolitical change and the impact of the CTF regime. Since the end of the Cold War, state sponsorship has declined significantly, and terrorist organizations have had to work harder to source financing. Document troves recovered in places such as Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan shed detailed light on terrorist funding strategies and the restrictions they face. Funds are sourced from both legitimate and criminal business operations, tax raising, and charging tolls on roads and in ports. Two particularly lucrative sources are deep-pocketed donors who make donations in lieu of travelling to participate in the struggle themselves and kidnap for ransom. The latter is perhaps currently the largest and most profitable source, with some arguing that KFR is now a strategic goal for terrorists in certain regions. This is hardly surprising given the numbers involved. Recent estimates suggest that AQIM has raised nearly $30 million via KFR in the 5 years since 2008. Recovered documents also point to the impact that the CTF regime is having. For example, correspondence between Al-Qaeda's then deputy Ayman al-Zawahiri and AQI leader al-Zarqawi asked AQI to send $100,000 as many of the previous lines of financial help for AQ Corps have been cut off. In addition, some argue that the apparent greater use of criminality by terrorist groups points to funding shortages. They argue that turning to crime exposes terrorists to risks they didn't face when flushed with donations. The global CTF regime has not been without controversy. Victims of asset freezing often appeal and, after many years, reverse the original actions of the authorities. Furthermore, apparently innocent charities, businesses, and individuals have had their banking services and accounts disrupted and suspended as banks, put on the CTF frontline by the authorities, seek to protect themselves from fines and sanctions levied by regulators for compliance failures. In summary, CTF has become one of the key, albeit little noticed planks of the global CT strategy. Terrorists need to raise and move funds in order to operate, and to the extent the authorities can disrupt this activity, they can reduce the ability of terrorists to operate and force them to take risks that are more likely to expose them to discovery. CTF has proven to be highly effective at times, but ensuring that this global effort remains so needs constant work as the shape and methods of terrorist organisations evolve, perhaps integrating more closely with organised crime or using advances in social media to build financial support and to solicit donations.